Excellent. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this panel for blockchain for Islamic finance. We're very excited to get started. Um, uh, as you can see, there's a distinguished panel of guests here. And I think before we move on, let me just address, this is an interactive session, so you can ask questions, right? So whenever you want to ask questions, please go to the Slido link. You can interact with Slido for this session to ask any questions that you want, because at the end of the session, 10 minutes left, we're going to answer your questions so that we can, we can basically have the panel session questions and then transit to Q&A at the end. So whenever you have a question, please go to Slido and type your questions there, and then we'll pick it from Slido, and then we're going to ask the panel at the end of the session. All right. So let's start with this very exciting panel, because as you can see, with esteemed guests in the panel who are experts in the field of blockchain as well as Islamic finance. And this is really a very exciting topic, because at the nexus of a very revolutionary and novel technology, blockchain, as well as Islamic finance, right? So what started out as a radical idea to disintermediate the global monetary system back in 2009 through the invention of, as you guys know, Bitcoin, has led to a technical revolution that is really unfolding right before our very eyes. In just the span of the decade, as we can see that the exponential growth of this new technology has resulted in a myriad of new innovations and novel structures across the entire economy. And this has sparked the obvious discussion, right? Where does Islamic finance fit into this? To discuss this even further, to deeper detail, we have a distinguished panel of guests and experts to explore more about the crossroads of this new technology of blockchain and Islamic finance. So let me introduce you to the speakers. First, we have Almir Kolan, right? He's the director of the Australian Centre for Islamic Finance and the CEO of Olive, which is an investment company focused on ethical investments towards the Australian healthcare sector. Almir is also an advisor of several community finance and investment institutions. The second on our panel is Muhammad Naqib, who is the co-founder and CEO of Marhaba DeFi, which is the first Sharia-focused protocol in the decentralized finance space, or the DeFi space. Muhammad Naqib is also a digital asset and innovation expert that has an extensive background in the blockchain space. He's also an advisor to several blockchain companies, blockchain and cryptocurrency companies. And last but certainly not least is Dr. Mutaz Abu Jaid, who is an ISRA researcher on blockchain for Zakat. Dr. Mutaz is a trainer and Islamic finance expert with 15 years of work experience in finance, research, and consultancy in different jurisdictions in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. He holds a PhD in Islamic finance, and he is also a certified Sharia advisor and auditor, CSAA from IOFI, a senior associate member of Chartered Institute of Islamic Finance Professionals, and a chairperson for the Islamic Fintech Leaders Forum. So as you can see, we have quite a distinguished guest here. As for me, I'll be your moderator. So my name is Aziz bin Zainuddin. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Facet, which is a regulated platform that aims to streamline digital asset adoption in frontier markets. So basically, I handle basically the building our entire product infrastructure focused on asset tokenization and digital assets trading. So that's the introduction. I think let's dive right into this. Everyone has been following the blockchain or the cryptocurrency space. It has been in every news outlet you can see, for example, price actions of various digital assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, as well as the various evolution and use cases of blockchain technology within the economic sector. Right. So the first category of questions is centered around the values and principles of Islamic finance and its alignment with blockchain technology. Right. So let's start with Almir. here's my first question to you, right? How do you think how compatible are the traits of blockchain, right? When we talk about its salient features like disintermediation to the values and principles espoused by Islamic finance.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to be today with you and very esteemed guests. So I'd like to thank you and also listeners. Regarding your introductory remarks, I think you are spot on. The reason why we have seen some of these issues come up with technology and blockchain and even crypto itself is because a lot of people has lost trust in terms of many of the policies we have seen in the genesis of the first blockchain of Satoshi putting the reference to the bailouts from the banks. So a lot of people have been kind of disillusioned by the way that whole financial crisis happened, what made it happen, what kind of lack of regulation led to it, and later on what kind of stimulus and actions were taken to bail out those companies. And a lot of people saw this as very unethical approach, lack of regulations, or bailouts that were correlated with the large interest groups. And so people felt that there is no one in their corner. So the promise of the blockchain and crypto itself was basically to bring trust back to the people, to decentralize or remove the trust from centralized authorities. Now, whether that experiment succeeded or not is the question. I think when we today talk about, for example, decentralized nature of crypto being asset, I'm not so sure about it. It's a feature, whether when you mix it in the financial system is a positive or negative, it remains the question mark. You see, when we're talking about blockchain, first we need not to put every blockchain in the one bag. You have public, you have private, permissionless. So which one specifically are we addressing here? So that's the number one thing. So when we are talking about whether the blockchain itself has some kind of links with Islamic finance, I would say that Islamic finance should remain tech neutral. It should be neutral, and it should be concerned with your normal underlying business or economic transactions that are happening, regardless of the form of technology. And I think there is a tendency these days to basically say, here is the here is the blockchain, and we are searching for the problem that it solves. I think that's a not usual way we deal with the problems in society. Mostly what we in society do is we say what is specifically problem we are trying to solve, and then we see what fits, what solution we apply to it. I think with the crypto being basically database that is spread across a couple of more, computers sitting there, we have maybe overhyped it. And so I would say that at the heart of the financial system is a trust. And so what we need to get from crypto is, can we get the same investor and market protection and the trust that we normally see in regulatory framework? Because all of our transactions now, whatever database we use or whatever kind of money or how we deliver, all of these transactions are wrapped in a legal framework that we can trust. Now, some attempts after we see the basement of currency and regulations, some have tried to make a Bitcoin, and the blockchain to be something that is seen outside of this framework that is regulated. And I think if we respond to lack of regulations that we seen before, if we respond with debasement of the social order and taking this technology outside of regulatory into unlicensed territory of financial products and services, I think that we might result in a debasement of the trust of the market and market participants and investors. So the point is that whatever solution we are getting, we should look at underlying economic realities of what we are achieving, not get caught up in technology of it. And we should ask whether the same protection for investors, participants are in that technology world or digital world or blockchain, decent, whatever you want to call it, as we expect in the rest of our financial system. So that's how I would see it. And then I would then say, well, if we have these disclosures, protections, and legal recourse, then we can start thinking about whether this aligns itself, the end product, whether that aligns itself with Islamic finance or aims of Sharia that actually tries to protect wealth of the people. So that is the core aim of Sharia, to protect the wealth and the harm that might cause. So that's what we need to answer, I think, with the blockchain.
Thank you very much for your extensive answer, Almi. You certainly brought a lot of valuable insights to this equation. So you rightly mentioned about the delineation of how blockchains should be viewed as, for example, public and private. Now, my next question is to Nakib, right? When we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, it's often very interrelated in a sense, like they are like very closely tied up, right? Although, I mean, there is a degree of delineation. Now, when Almir said that there might, as in Islamic finance should be net neutral, right? Conversely, can blockchain be viewed as an agnostic technology in which we can extrapolate whatever traditional or conventional structures into the on-chain digital realm, right? And if so, is it true that extrapolating the rules and parameters of Islamic finance into this agnostic piece of technology is how does the foundational traits of blockchain, right, align to the value of Islamic finance?
Okay, very thoughtful question, Brother Aziz. And look, blockchain in itself is technology. So it has nothing specific. It is not specific to Islamic finance. It is not specific to any other sector. It's technology just like any other technology. So for example, internet. So I cannot say Islamic internet for Islamic finance or internet for supply chain sector. It's not like that. So internet is technology that you can make use of to fulfill your use cases. Similar is blockchain. And as Brother Almi said, it is a database. Yes, it is. And how we make use of this database is our creativity. And this is what the journey right now is going on. People across the world are finding out their own use cases and utilizing it for solving their own problems. For example, Faucet has its own set of use cases in the blockchain. Marhaba has its own set of use cases in the blockchain, and so does anybody else. But as far as finance is considered, there are two aspects to it. So first is the use cases that can be done on the blockchain, as I said. And Islamic finance, look, I'm not an expert in Islamic finance. I'll never claim to be as well. I'm a technological, I come from a technological background, and this is what I bring on the table wherever I go. So for me, what really means blockchain for Islamic finance is plugging the holes that I myself as a user of Islamic finance, I see it in the world. And this is where Marhaba was born. We saw a gap in the traditional financial ecosystem. I looked into Islamic finance that deals with those in the blockchain use cases. We found those gaps. We didn't find something solving those problems in the market. And this is where a new use case was born. Okay. And as Brother Amir said, it is absolutely the right approach to go with anything, that you first have a problem and then its solution, not that you have a that you search for the solution after you know what the problem. I mean, it's not the other way around, right? It's never like that. So in terms of trust is concerned, I think that is paramount in any financial system, especially in Islamic finance. And this is exactly what blockchain solves. I mean, one of the core properties is that it removes the intermediaries, right? So as more and more players get involved in any chain of transactions or in any use cases, the friction increases. So what blockchain really brings on the table is that it removes this intermediary. So once you code the logics, you code the algorithms in the as part of the code, that runs without any external third party interference, or with anyone even capable of modifying those algorithms and logics. So this is one of the best use cases that that financial financial products they explore on the blockchain. And like going forward, this is where I mean, crypto-based use cases comes. You know, blockchain and cryptocurrency, there are two separate things. They are not the same. Cryptocurrency is one of the use cases that's done on the blockchain, and not every financial system should utilize cryptocurrency. Just like not every blockchain use cases as well. Probably there are in facets as well. You don't have your own coin, right? So, but you do use your the blockchain underlying technology to tokenize real world assets, and this is how it goes. So I mean, whenever we are talking about that, we should usually keep the cryptocurrency aspect and the technological aspect separate. When we mix when we tend to mix both of them, this might create confusion, and this is not the right way to approach this area.
Excellent. Thanks for your insights, Nakib. So one of the things that you mentioned, which is very pertinent in terms of how blockchain is going to be used in Islamic finance, is the actual use cases that we should see or that we are already seeing. Now, my next question is pertaining the use of blockchain technology, and this is to Dr. Mutis. Right? To what extent has blockchain influenced Islamic fintech?
Thank you very much, Brother Aziz. Firstly, let me put in record my thanks and gratitude for the Security Commission for organizing this lovely event and inviting me to share my thoughts. I think I agree very much with my fellow panelists here when we think about how we shall think about the technology. Yes, it's about the problems and solving the problem. And for me, when we talk about use cases in Islamic finance, it's also the same approach. So the way how I think about the link between Islamic finance and blockchain is by looking into the challenges that we are facing in Islamic finance. And then we look into what are the features that blockchain brings, and then we can see whether it matches or not. And if we are talking about Islamic finance, despite all the developments that we have, and now Islamic finance reach a market share higher than ever before, and it became a significant market share in a lot of jurisdictions. But despite this progress, still we receive at Islamic finance a lot of criticism that we couldn't basically achieve the potential of Islamic finance. The promises of Islamic finance is really beyond what is available today in the market. And to a certain extent, the criticisms has a really sound argument behind. We couldn't bring up the Mudaraba, the risk-sharing contracts, and all of this. So to look into this, we look into the fintech. Fintech basically allows a lot of much more flexibility. Because in Islamic banks, for example, we have a lot of restrictions. Right? The banks as an institution is structured in a way to save the depositors' money. It's a low risk and deposit side. And then in the financing side, we cannot really go into the high risk, high return Mudaraba financing, for example. So this is why it's very challenging to apply all the concepts of Islamic finance, the promises, and also the banking, the unbanked, and then addressing also the microfinancing, all of these issues. So it is difficult. Fintech allows basically addressing these issues. We have seen some developments in the crowdfunding, for example, where we see the potential of applying the equity financing. Similarly for blockchain, the way how I see it is like, it may allow us to introduce some of the products that we couldn't introduce for a certain extent. This could happen under the banking institutions or outside the banking institutions. So blockchain has, if we look into the features of blockchain, we can see that it has this immutability, the security, the trust, the disintermediation. If we look to the challenges, for example, that we are facing, one of the key challenges that we are facing is like the trust, especially, for example, when we talk about the Islamic social finance and when we talk about risk-sharing contracts. we need to establish that kind of trust. So maybe this could be a way, there could be a way of leveraging on the blockchain to bring up this. However, this again depends on, it's just a name of technology, blockchain. So it depends on the design and the structure. But if we still look into what this brings, I agree with the brother Almir that it's, at the end of the day, blockchain is a database. But the way, in my personal opinion, the technology has really a potential of something beyond a normal database. It allows a lot of creativity, and this was mentioned by brother Naqib. It's a space where you can be very creative in terms of how you introduce the tokenization, how you structure the whole thing, right? And if we look into the future, if we see once we have the right infrastructure, a complete ecosystem, where, for example, you can have a cryptocurrency, maybe a digital linked central bank, CDBC, and then a lot of these coins, and then we have stable coins, we have tokens, we have NFTs, and then you introduce a solution within that environment, and you can be very creative and you can have something beyond what we have today. Traceability for me is something very, very important in blockchain. Blockchain as a technology, it allows this traceability, transparency, yet you can protect privacy because of the cryptography. So these features, in fact, they really interesting features to look into, because when we talk about Islamic finance in particular, and halal businesses in general, we need this kind of traceability. We need to know what is happening throughout the whole process. And this is to ensure Sharia compliance, but also to ensure impact, to have the right impact. So these aspects of blockchain can really bring a lot of values to Islamic finance, vice versa. So I see a potential of link, but again, it depends on the applications. We see already now a few trials in the markets. I think we are progressing. We are learning also. It's a learning curve. And it's not only about Islamic finance, it's about the finance. So we see a lot of developments in the DeFi. We saw problems at the beginning, and now we can see a lot of development in the market. And then another aspect to look into, what mentioned by Brother Almir, is the regulation. I'm not sure this is a really debatable aspect. Do we need to regulate everything or not? Because this can go to everything, not only to the crypto and blockchain, to any applications. Always has been an argument whether we need to allow a more market discipline or a regulation. There is pros and cons for each aspect. But a market discipline requires high awareness in the market and understanding all the technology. Then you can allow the market discipline forces to take place. In the absence of market discipline, or absence of the awareness, understanding of the technology, people could be easily decepted and driven away by some manipulation, right? We have seen this in ICOs, and it has been manipulated. So regulation would be necessary at the inception phase. So these kind of aspects that I think we need to look into. I think I will stop here because we have the time limit, right? Maybe we can add on later on. Thank you very much, brother.
Yes, we'll definitely touch on the regulations later. It's also interesting that you talk about, for example, the importance of adoption, right? And this is where we're going to talk about institutional adoption, which is a very important core pillar when you talk about a new technology or basically a new industry, right? So my next question goes to Almir. Institutional adoption and traction across the entire blockchain technology has been exponentially growing, with various use cases and various developments, right? My question is there enough institutional awareness on the technology with regards to Islamic finance, and how accessible is this technology for Islamic finance institutions which are looking to explore it?
Well, I think when it comes to institution, I think mostly what institutions are looking for is a private blockchain that they can control, that is within their control. other than crypto, where you are having more sort of public, where everybody can participate in that blockchain and so on, most of the institutions are looking something that is still centralized between some of their branches or parts of the government or a part of organization. So for example, if you are a stock exchange, you might be looking at some kind of a private blockchain to settle these transactions, or clearing house or something like that. Or if you are a central bank, you're not going to do a public blockchain where everybody can mine and mint and all of these things. You're looking at something private. So organizations still want to control what they are doing and how it's happening. They are not going to allow anybody to just come in. Now, for whatever reason, settling something or security, distributing the files in case something falls down or shuts down, or these are common sense solutions that these organizations are undertaking. Now, when it comes to specific solutions, most of the solutions that people are doing, they can already do with whatever tools they already have. I mean, there are easier ways to be transparent. If you want to be transparent, there is a very easy way you can be transparent. I mean, I don't see what the problem is, So people usually in business go with whatever works, whatever solution works. If I want to disclose everything I'm doing, I can easily disclose, link it, and you can see it and you can track it and do something with information. So I don't need to necessarily do anything else to it. Now, if there is a way, if we need to track something and be certain amongst each other, again, there are different ways we can do and track and so on. So the question then become more integrity of information that you are feeding, for example, to that blockchain, not necessarily how you're tracking it. It's integrity and how can I audit that, which are usually common sense things. So again, back to the point here is the question, like if we are making, let's say, some application or something like that, and we say that, I can't trust current intermediation with our banks or a Visa card or PayPal. And I don't know if anybody has a problem currently how banks intermediate. I don't think that was a problem. Does anyone have a problem how the banks update the ledgers today? Because banks update the ledger at the central bank, isn't it? That's how our money works now. So I don't think Satoshi was right when he said we have a problem with that I have a problem how my bank's going to record my transactions and what's happening in that side. So whenever we bring up point, we need to back it up and say, here is how we don't trust currently banks to update our ledgers in the central bank part. And this is how blockchain is actually doing. So these are kind of claims easy made, but we need to see specifically, does that stack up? Rather than just throwing the word blockchain on a problem and say, this is blockchain. And then by default, it means it's solution. We need to stop pretending that just the word solves the problem without showing us how exactly and what sort of problem is there.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Almer. So then, this puts us at a very convenient tone when we talk about the obstacle and challenges for blockchain, right? You talk about, for example, aligning the use cases to actual, as in basically business or practical use cases that adds value to a company or entity, right? So that's a very important thing. Now, talking about obstacles and challenges for blockchain, Nakib, right? What are the current and anticipated challenges that Islamic finance institution may face in trying to incorporate blockchain into their operations? And if so, in the first place, why would they want to do that, right? So you could talk, we can explore challenges such as regulatory frameworks, undeveloped ecosystem infrastructure or lack of trust or belief in blockchain systems. So I would like to hear your opinions on how, what would be the current and anticipated challenges that Islamic finance institution may face when implementing, or trying to implement blockchain technology.
Yeah, so that's a good question, because the number one problem that is being faced right now by the institutions across the world and by individual users like you and me is the usage of the technology, of the use case. Now, for example, if I'm not in a situation to swipe my phone to complete a transaction, so I'm going to a supermarket, getting a kilo of apple from there, and I'm not able to easily pay this with my crypto with 1 clicks or 2 clicks, then that means the adoption problem hasn't been solved yet. So unless and until we reach to a position where we can seamlessly use crypto for payments, the problems don't get solved. And as part of the regulation is concerned, I mean, this obviously it's a very debatable topic. We'll touch on this dedicatedly, but I mean, the definition of regulation differs from person to person and even jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I mean, regulation set by whom? By the United States of America, by the United Kingdom, by Malaysia, by Singapore. So whose regulations are you talking about? Or the regulation set by the law of the land that you are residing in. So this is something that we need to decide on, and this is something we need to discuss on. What problems are we trying to solve from finance in general? What problems are we trying to solve from Islamic finance in general? And if we are trying to shape our use cases or our problems as per the regulations set by a few people sitting in a room in some part of the world, that, I mean, you are not actually listening to the problems of the crowd, to the problems of the community, because the main application of finance is is bringing the social inclusion and the financial inclusion among the masses, and you are excluding few people just because some people told you not to include them. I don't think that's fair. I mean, again, that's my personal humble opinion. The discussion can go on, and there can be debates around it. So this is something that I don't favor, and I would not like to go for it. And this is the reason why DeFi was born. In true sense, Bitcoin was DeFi, and then the definition has changed. And how Bitcoin was used and is being used has changed. It was born so that you remove the intermediaries, you remove the banks, you remove the friction out of it. But then again, what people are doing nowadays, they are converting their fiat to crypto, moving from the banks and putting them in the exchanges. And again, they are dependent on the exchanges to handle their money. So it doesn't solve the problem at all. And then you have the decentralized financial use cases that's coming up. Again, the differences, the opinions are different. For example, we have had this criticism even in Marhaba, that we are not entirely decentralized because of the Sharia governance. We control a lot of things. We control what protocols go in, what tokens go in. So we control all of these things. So even there's a debate around it that whether this particular product is entirely decentralized or not. And as part of the private or the public blockchains are concerned, so there is a limit of revealing the information that is required. For example, as Brother Almi said, that institutions would not want the data to be revealed to if they're on the public blockchain. That's absolutely right. But even in the public blockchain, so as the revolution goes on, I mean, this is a changing ecosystem. Every day we have new technologies and new use cases that's coming up. Not use cases, new ways of implementing those technology. We have zero knowledge proofs, which absolutely works fabulous in terms of public blockchains. So even if you're going to large financial institutions, large governmental institutions, they are capable of getting on board a public network as well if they have the zero knowledge proofs in place. So you exactly reveal what is required, and you hide what you are not supposed to reveal to your competitors or to your other institutions. The private blockchain is a huge debate. In my personal opinion, I don't consider private blockchain to be a blockchain at all. I mean, I don't understand why somebody should have a private blockchain that you can control. There are 6 people who authorize transactions. There are 6 people who control what information goes in and goes out, because the fundamental problem of blockchain is garbage in and garbage out. So whatever you put in, that stays there forever. So who controls the information that gets in? 6 people sitting on top of an organization? That's not blockchain at all. That's not why blockchain was supposed to be. We can have an encrypted database to replace that. We don't need blockchain at all. So this is where this fancy word comes in, that we don't really understand where blockchain is required. We try to push blockchain in everything and everywhere. without understanding what real problems it could solve and why do we need it. It has ended up being a marketing jargon that institutions use.
That's certainly a fair criticism when you talk about blockchain being used as a solution for not even an issue, right? So we call it fluff, right? But
Yeah.
the entire, as in most of this discussion has the narrative that blockchain's first use case or the prominent use case as a database, right? Now, if we look beyond that, when we look at the evolution of this entire industry, where we look at, okay, when Bitcoin was launched, blockchain technology was hot, right? And then you look at the evolution of blockchain, you see the birth of smart contracts, which are basically automated contracts that lives on chain and operates on your own, which are operated by code. Now, this certainly opens a lot of doors for innovation and potential vectors where we could solve real issues and add real value. Now, my question to you is this, right, Mutaz? When we talk about the evolution of blockchain from at the birth of smart contracts now, which obviously, when you look at DeFi, everything is based on smart contracts. So how do we foresee the use of smart contracts for Islamic finance in terms of efficiency, productivity, and maybe cost reduction, right? So can we have a sense of how smart contracts could affect Islamic finance to add value, real value?
Thank you very much, brother. Let me try to link the question with some of the comments made by participants here. I think we are here. You see, there is a debate regarding the problems that we are facing, right? So I think to really address the issue, we need to clarify what are the problems, and the problems might not be the same across countries. And this is very important to recognize and acknowledge. So we see, like, let's say when we are talking about the banking sector, we say like, okay, we have no issue with the banking system. It depends. It really depends. In some of the developed countries, yes, if you are living in USA, you are enjoying the dominance of USD, you are in a safe zone there. You might see that, okay, banking sector is working well for me. If you are living in undeveloped countries where the monetary system is really managed by corrupted officials or something like this, you will see like the exchange rate may be deteriorating, maybe the policies are biased. Then you will see like, no, the banking system is not really working. And then another aspect to look into is not only by the corruption and that kind of things, but also sometimes the central banks, they have some specific objectives to achieve, and they are ready to compromise other things to reach that objective. Let's say, for example, stability of the system. So they bail out big banks because of a certain aspect to ensure stability in the market, but they may have adverse effect on other, part of the society, the lower income. In fact, central banks, they are aware of this problem. They are doing their best to address it by allowing microfinance institutions, etc., to focus on that sector. But at the end of the day, we have different issues in different countries, in different contexts. So I see that we have issues with the banking system, in my personal view. The banking system is a bit biased. And if you look into even the marketing, if you go in, I have been in the banking sector. I'm a banker before. So I know in the bank, you will think about profitability. You will think about the clients that can bring you up profits, and you may really push some of the clients out of the bank because you have a certain objective to achieve, right? A certain goal. So we may have different problems, and each problem could be addressed. Some of these problems could be addressed by using the blockchain technology. Other problems will not. So this is a very important. We are talking now when you are asking about specific case and the smart contracts and Islamic finance. Again, it depends on the problem that we are facing. For example, if we look to the sukuk market, the big issue that we have here, we don't have really a retail. There are some challenges, of course, different challenges in different jurisdictions, etc. We have high cost in general in the sukuk. It's a very complicated, regulated markets, so it is costly. So we don't really have a retail sukuk. If we look to the blockchain and cryptocurrency development, all of this, we might come up with some creative solution where we can use the technology to allow a retail sukuk, because basically you can tokenize and you can, the crypto and tokens can be divisible almost infinity. And then you can trade this small fractions of the sukuk. So you may have some kind of, a solution. Maybe I missed a point regarding the smart contract. What I wanted also to clarify first, and maybe Brother Nahid can elaborate on this, on what is a smart contract. Smart contract for me is, the end of the day, we need to understand that smart contract is just in the blockchain environment. It's rather a technology term. It's a technical term, refers to a self-executing program, which may or may not represent a legal contract or agreement. So it depends really on what aspect we are talking about smart contracts. Smart contract could be very useful for Islamic finance, but it depends to what extent you are using it. So we might be looking into a fully automated solution, a sukuk on blockchain, purely on blockchain. And we may look also to other aspects where we use smart contract for a very specific, to solve a very specific issue or challenge within that. For example, taking the collaterals, for example, recording the sukuk, maybe devising the sukuk after its issuance. So it depends on the use case. But in general, I would say that there is a potential for blockchain to in the sukuk market. And for the sake of the time, maybe we can just mention a couple of other use cases. Digitization of gold, I think this is a very important application. Gold has a specific position in Islamic economics, and especially in the eyes of the Muslims. And whether we are talking about a currency or an investment, digitization of gold and the trading of gold, in Sharia, we have a very specific rules for this, right? We have the rules of sarf, where we allow only spot trading. And in blockchain and cryptocurrency world, we may automate this, and we may ensure that we are basically following the right rules. Where in some of the traditional aspects or applications, it might be more difficult because you need to go through intermediaries, and if you are talking about digital forms, then it may take time and it might complicate the process. So digitization of gold, I think this is one of the interesting application for Islamic finance. That trading, of course, interbank liquidity products is also another interesting use case. Islamic Bank is still facing some issues on having a liquidity, and then the crypto blockchain applications, DeFi system, they may allow some new instruments where you can ensure some kind of at least interbank liquidity market, or even just more liquidity products for the retail. Over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Now, I think we have only a few minutes left to answer some. Basically, we only have time for one questions from the audience. So thank you very much for the audience for sending over some questions. Unfortunately, we only have one, as in we can only have time for one question. So I'm going to ask this question, right? To the panelists, what area of Islamic finance will be best to consider when we want to implement blockchain? So this is an open question to the panels. Amir, perhaps you, as in starting with you, what areas do you think would be best considered for the use of blockchain technology?
Well, I would go back to what Dr. Muta said about banking system not working. And I would say which part is not working, which is exactly as he pointed out, which is monetary policies. Let's focus blockchain on monetary policy and discipline when it comes to the regulators. In terms of anything else that calls for holding somebody accountable, I would say let's point the blockchain there. Let's develop the product that would ensure discipline in the market, and use the blockchain for this purpose that was intended, to hold those people in power accountable, so that people can see actually transparency and what is going on in reality.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Amir. Now I'm going to move on to Nakib, right, for this question. But before that, I just want to add a sprinkle of thoughts, right, in terms of the previous question answered by Dr. Mutes when we talk about smart contracts for Islamic finance. The question to you is slightly different, right? In terms of where is the best use case for blockchain with in Islamic finance in the context of smart contracts, especially when you're the founder of Marhaba, a DeFi protocol, and obviously in DeFi the use of smart contracts is omnipresent. So where do you see the use case of smart contracts and blockchain technologies within the Islamic finance sphere?
Okay, that's a good question. For me, the use of smart contracts is paramount in terms of DeFi, and especially in what we are doing at Mahaba, because we have to ensure at all times that the Sharia rulings and the screening criteria, auditing criteria are pristine. I mean, they're untouched and they're unadulterated going forward. So, for example, there is this, I mean, the way our Sharia team works is that we have an in-house Sharia team, and then we have an external independent Sharia team that is a challenge to our internal team. So there's a check and balance all the time that goes on. So this is to ensure that whatever has been decided and whatever is taken as the base for deciding on a particular way of how the platform would work is intact. So these are the things that are coded as part of the logic in a smart contract and then put into the blockchain. Because of the immutability of the blockchain, this stays there forever. I mean, it cannot change. So there are challenges to this aspect. The downside of this is that because DeFi is programmable money, and especially it's not a native cryptocurrency. It's DeFi in definition. It's a smart contract running on top of a blockchain, and then you have the tokens of the DeFi, which is another layer of smart contracts that runs on top of these decentralized applications. So these changes, I mean, from time to time, the features of the dApps and the features and the applications of these dApp changes as the upgrades happen. So this corrupts the underlying logic of how the scrutiny was done earlier. So we are lucky that as the technology is moving, we have upgradable smart contracts, and then we have there are ways to mitigate these challenges as well. So this is where, I mean, smart contract, it's just a naming thing. I don't know why it's called a smart contract. It's not smart at all. It's a piece of code that you put it on the blockchain that stays there forever. For example, I mean, I don't know how much of technical background our viewers have, but even in our traditional servers, you have a file called cron tab that's deployed in the beginning. So this actually, the cron tab works as a scheduler that schedules all the operations inside a server. So smart contract is you can say similar to that. So you put in certain conditions to it, you put in certain criteria, you put in certain codes to it, and then you deploy this code on the blockchain that runs there without any external party or corrupting the code. So this is what smart contract is. Neither smart, neither does it, or neither is it a contract. So it's just a piece of small code, a simple code that's there. And this is what is required in finance, because when you are reaching a consensus in deciding certain ways how the platform should operate, that consensus has to be preserved. It has to be free from any other external influence going forward. So this is the challenge that today's financial systems face, because due to external influence and its external pressure, we don't really have Islamic finance in its true sense in the current banking systems. I mean, this is not what I say. This is what the experts in Islamic finance say, and this is probably one of the best use cases that DeFi will solve. And DeFi is the perfect answer to all the gaps currently in Islamic finance. This is what I feel, and this is my opinion.
Thank you, Brother Nakib. And lastly, Dr. Motas, right? When we talk about, also in the context of the question of how, as in blockchain technology can be used in Islamic finance, right? The lowest hanging fruit. So when we talk about, as in institutional adoption, you talk about, you can see, for example, R3 consortium, which is made up of the top global banks in the world, where they're exploring a base technology, R3 blockchain, which is sort of like a consortium blockchain, and then trying to figure out the value add in the process, exploration, so that the next step could potentially be a feasible and practical implementation of settlement, right? Now, when you talk about, as you said, right, when you talk about sukuks, the levels of complexity within them makes it inefficient and more expensive, right? Now, can you expand on that in terms of how blockchain and smart contracts could sort of abstract this layer of complexity and perhaps create value add to the end users, right? And simplify and basically demystify the entire Islamic finance process. And also additionally, what other use cases in Islamic finance that, as a banker, as previously as a banker, you could sort of like conceive?
Thank you very much. I think it's really very big question. I think that would need another panel to answer, but I will do my best. I think first of all, I think that because it again, as mentioned before, it's about it's a technology. It's about how we design it, and I agree with Brother Nahib on explaining how things works, right? So I'm not sure whether after the explanation of Brother Nahib, you can say that can blockchain simplify. So so I think for a lot of listeners, they will say like, oh, that's a lot of complexity. Whether blockchain can simplify what's going on in Islamic finance, it will be very challenging now to convince them about this. But again, it really depends on the use case. The way how I see it is, there is, when we talk about institutions, when we are talking about the banks, as rightly also mentioned by brother Almir, there is some kind of tendency you see when you discuss with them that, okay, can we have a private blockchain? Or can we have a federated blockchain and not really a public blockchain? There are pros and cons for each setup. And this is a very debatable, thing. Right? And most of those who have a strong technology background, I say like, this private is not really blockchain, as mentioned by Brother Nahiwezi. But at the end of the day, there is a pros and cons for each setup. And I have been in discussion with a few institutions. Always there is the issue that we end up, even if they are convinced with a federated or private blockchain, then when we talk about the cost, it's very costly. Because if you are talking about the private or federated blockchain, especially federated, you need to have sort of decentralized way of setup. So you need to have several nodes, and you need to set up your own business, your own protocol, and you need to convince certain parties to participate in this federated for, basically you need to have an incentive of blockchain incentive, basically to ensure that your system works efficiently. And then to develop all of this, there will be a high cost. When you talk about the cost, then there will be really a problem. Right? While, for example, public blockchain solutions could be a much easier solution, right, to implement and less costly. You can have your a simple solution on Ethereum really by a simple developer, or a first level developer, I would say like that. But you are programming the whole protocol by yourself. You need really to have an experienced developer, which is very hard to find. Then you need to have a team who understand the technology deeply and understand also the finance world very deeply, and then to convince them to come up with a solution. So in terms of use cases, what I hope in the future to have is something on the sukuk side, something for the zakat solution, not necessarily to be adopted by a certain institution, but maybe as a decentralized solution that can really bring a lot of benefits to the end users. But it always depends how we can address this, the challenges that we have. So what I would like to highlight here, that we need always to think about the cost, about the regulation, because regulation is a very important aspect to look into. If you are not allowed to, you cannot trade the cryptos in a certain jurisdiction. You cannot build up a solution on crypto or using cryptocurrencies or public blockchain. So it is very a challenging part. And then the last thing is about the ecosystem. What I hope in the future to have for Islamic finance is some kind of a blockchain solution, a decentralized solution that can allow Islamic finance to build up certain components within this. It's not necessarily to have like a blockchain or public blockchain exclusive for Islamic finance, but is to have something designed that can really serve our purpose and also others, Muslims and non-Muslims, but to be ethically built and fair system within that kind of setup that will allow a lot of, will allow Islamic financial institutions, will give them an easier way to use the blockchain and leverage on blockchain to have much more solutions. Yeah. In terms of use cases, I think I have mentioned a couple. So I think that's maybe the zakat and waqf we didn't mention, we didn't stress much on it, but there is also a lot of potential for this, especially if we are talking about decentralized system, a DeFi, a really DeFi system. That could be a very interesting use case.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Mutaz. So I think with that, we'll wrap up this panel. It's really been a pleasure moderating this with esteemed and distinguished panelists in this discussion. And I think with all that information, knowledge, and discussions that we have had, I think it's very important for us to pave the way from here. And whatever that we have discussed should basically be the foundational layers of how we can pick those elements up and discuss it even further on the stakeholder level, right? And I think this is basically the right steps in addressing whatever that needs to be addressed before we can sort of like move this forward and move Islamic finance forward in this age and time. So once again, thank you very much for your questions. Apologies that we can only have time for one question on Slido, but inshallah, moving forward, I think we would have more initiatives like this that can easily address a much more diverse range of questions. So with that, I think thank you very much for your all the audience for your participation, and again, thank you very much for the panelists for their wide-ranging ideas and viewpoints. And I think all of us have, especially me, benefited from all of the discussions. And I think we can sort of like close this panel. And thank you very much for SC for organizing this. And we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, brother Aziz. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.